For Chapter 6 about effective listening, I have a short overview for you about some key points within the chapter. Wood's focus questions are: how do listening and hearing differ? What's involved in listening? What obstacles interfere with listening? How does effective listening differ across goals? And how can we improve our listening skills? The last two are very crucial points. I think she does them service within the chapter. If you have questions about them, please feel free to ask me. I'll be focusing on the first 3 points of her listening questions. So let's take a minute and watch a quick clip. And as you watch, take a minute and write down, what are traits of a good listener? And what do we see not happening here in this clip? This is from the movie Easy A.
All right, well, the reason I called you in was just so we could sort of, just chat about what's going on. There's concern from a few faculty members.
Your husband.
Olive, you're attempting to make a statement. I'm just a little confused as to what exactly that is.
Am I in trouble? Because, pursuant to the Student Code of Conduct, my hemline has never been higher than my fingertips.
No, you're not in trouble. No, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that if there's something that you want to talk about, you can trust me.
If I open up to you, do you promise this stays in confidence?
Yeah, I'm the guidance counselor. That's what I do.
I mean, I have a reputation to uphold.
Don't you, though? All right, listen, don't tell anyone I'm doing this. Please. Here you go. Here you go.
I really don't need those.
Oh, you really do. Here you go. Here you go. Okay, I just don't want this thing you're going through to define your life. Olive, do what you gotta do, okay? Let your freak flag fly. Just make sure you have an exit strategy.
Listen, Mrs. Griffith, I don't need these.
You know what? The pill is not 100% effective. Ask some of your friends' parents. Thank you for coming in. Can you just send in the next person?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So within that clip, how do we see effective listening happening or not, right? What would you want to experience within that interaction if you were in that student seat, right? What makes for a good listener? So listening is defined as the process of receiving, constructing meaning from, and responding to spoken and or nonverbal messages. And so it's important to note here that nonverbal messages do count in things that we should be listening to. So let's compare this idea of receiving and constructing meaning from and responding to, and compare all that to hearing. Hearing is actually the physiological process, right? Listening is the building of relationships. Hearing is, does the sound get all the way into your brain, right? Not yet what sense you make of it. When we talk about the process of listening, we have to physically receive messages, right? So we have to be able to hear them. And then we take that information, we select and we organize it. So think back to your chapter on perception. We also interpret it. Also think back to your chapter on perception, as well as the last few chapters we've talked about some of the difficulties of interpreting ambiguous and abstract communication. We have to respond, whether that be through feedback, verbal, nonverbal, right? And ideally, in order to be effective listeners building good relationships, we also remember what was said. We're able to reference it later. And all of this goes into what we refer to as mindfulness, right? And being mindful within our interactions of one another. And I've given you some resources within the site about what is mindful listening. So, quite a few things get in the way of listening. And we've talked about noise, and there's different types of noise. So we have some which are situational obstacles, and these are noise that occur in the situation, right? That are things that come up in the context. We also have internal obstacles that occur within the receiver, right? Within you as a person. These are internal obstacles. So within the context, some of the situational obstacles we get is message overload, message complexity, incomprehensibility, and environmental distractions. So let's say there's really just too much message. We're getting way too much of it. Let's say it's too complex for us. We don't know all the jargon that's being used. And these are reasons why it's very important to know your audience and adapt your message to your audience. Incomprehensibility, maybe someone's mumbling. Maybe you actually can't hear to the point where you can understand and make out the words. And environmental distractions, maybe there's construction outside, right? Maybe it's too cold and so you can't focus. So a lot of different ways that noise in the situation comes into play. And then within our head, a couple different things can be going on. Preoccupation. We're thinking about that party, we're thinking about how we're breaking up, right? And so we're not focused on what's going on. Prejudgments. I've already decided what I think of you, or what you're going to say, or whether I value what you're going to say. And so I don't effectively listen. And lack of effort is I'm really just not making the effort to listen, right? I can't be bothered to put in the time to do that. Another internal obstacle might be that we strongly react to what's being said. Someone uses language that we negatively respond to, or potentially very positively respond to, and it gets in the way of us listening to the rest of it. And then the other thing that can get in the way is diverse interaction styles, right? So maybe you're just very different than the person that you're interacting with, and that's getting in the way of you understanding the message or effectively being able to hear what it is they mean. And I have 6 different types of ineffective listening listed for you. So these are, we're listening but not doing it well. So pseudo-listening, we literally are pretending to listen. Pseudo means fake. We're monopolizing, where we're taking over the entire conversation, right? We're turning it to be us and me, and I'm not really that concerned with what you're saying. I'm using what you're saying as a jumping point for talking about myself. Selective listening, I think often we do this, and it's this idea that I hear what I want to hear, right? I'm only listening for particular information. Defensive listening is I'm immediately on the defensive, and so I'm going to interpret what you're saying as an attack on me. Ambushing is where we're listening to someone else and we're really only listening to gather ammunition in order to attack them. And literal listening is where you're getting so wrapped up in the content level but not the relational level of what someone means, right? So I'm listening to the literal words that you're using and not how the person's intending the meaning behind them. So these are all examples of ineffective listening. And it's important to think about all these pieces because as you read about ways to effectively listen and build your communication with others, your listening skills, your effective listening are crucial to being able to develop a communication climate that is supportive of others. And so within the upcoming chapter, we will talk about developing supportive and defensive communication climates, as well as confirming and disconfirming messages, all of which listening is a foundational step in.